This is my review of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Okay, so this episode starts off with our old pal Dio and his one follower, who's apparently named Enya the Hag. It was revealed in this episode, but I'm not gonna picture her because we've seen her already. But I'll just let you guys know that her name is Enya the Hag. So Enya and Dio have a bit of a start the episode off by having a bit of a philosophical conversation about what it means to be alive and what it means to live. And while they're having that conversation, Dio brings up to Enya that he is a little bit afraid of the Joestar group, but he points out that he's not necessarily afraid of them, but what they can do, because he realizes that they can't be underestimated, considering that Jonathan did kind of cut his head off and pretty much left him without a body from the neck down. So Dio has every right to be afraid of the Joestar family, considering that they did that to him last time they faced off. And Enya points out that he has no real reason to be afraid, considering the fact that he himself has several stand users under his employ, so he doesn't really have much reason to worry and should really try to save attacking them himself as a last-ditch effort. Meanwhile, the Joestar group have found out that the freighter has indeed come all this way to pick them up, apparently, but suspiciously enough, there's nobody aboard, and the Joestar group, the crew from the previous ship, and the little girl whose name is apparently Anne, I had to look that up, but the Joestar group with Anne in tow board the boat and suspiciously are unable to find a single crew member despite the ship being in perfect working order. At which point Anne finds an orangutan in a cage who looks a little bit more intelligent than it might be let on, and it does become increasingly apparent that this ape is intelligent. But the Joestar group persuades her not to engage with the ape any further and to get to safety, and do indeed ensure her that they are on her side. Meanwhile, while the Joestar group are trying to figure out what exactly is going on with this boat, one of the crew members is suddenly attacked by a crane that nobody touched. It just kind of came out of nowhere, swung and hit a guy, took his head off. And the Joestar group realized that there might be something wrong with the boat, and that there might be a stand user aboard, despite nobody actually seeing the stand being sabotaged. And actually goes to meet with the orangutan again, despite the Joestar group's interests and pleading for her not to go meet with the ape again, only to discover that it had not only managed to cut itself an apple, but also knows how to light a cigarette and has its own Playboy stash. So, yeah, it is becoming increasingly apparent that this ape is very intelligent, and Anne soon realizes this. And but then decides that she's sticky from the salt water and goes to take a shower. But meanwhile, the Joestar group haven't been able to find any on board, even with Hierophant Green, whose almost infinite range wasn't able to find anybody despite combing the entire area of the ship. And Jojo, he kind of left the group and found out that the orangutan had actually escaped its cage, and sure enough, the orangutan had actually killed several of the crew members, and by that I mean all the ones that are left, and actually walked in on Anne taking a shower and made a move on her for some reason. I mean, she is a cute girl, I can imagine that, but she's a bit underage. She's a bit underage, yet the orangutan doesn't seem to mind all too much. And Jojo has realized that the orangutan has escaped, realizes that it's probably going after Anne, and chases it down and throws it out of the room. But despite being engaged with the orangutan just kind of melts through the wall. And it's at this point where Jojo realizes that the entire ship is the stand. And the rest of the Joestar group figures this out a bit too late, though, as the ship has already begun to eat them and has thoroughly restrained their stands inside their body. And Jojo has been pinned to a wall as well, and so is Star Platinum, and neither of them are able to move. And the orangutan knows this. He's laughing all the way to the bank. He knows that they can't actually win at this point for the most part. And even the narrator confirms that that's what's going through the orangutan's mind and what he's trying to say. But Jojo comes up with a plan. He pops one of the buttons off of his collar and flicks it at the orangutan, which pisses off the orangutan something fierce because it kind of wounded his pride. And then Jojo mocks the fact that he has no pride to begin with because he's an ape. And then the orangutan attacks him, and Jojo is able to drive the button into his forehead with his stand, and then when the orangutan tries to show mercy, he unleashes a flurry rush with Star Platinum and finishes off this orangutan once and for all. At which point the boat starts to melt, and Jojo grabs Anne and gets the hell out of Dodge. And so does the rest of the group, who go back to the ships that they were on, only to discover that the stand was indeed possessing a small rowboat, and that the freighter wasn't actually a real freighter, but it was just the entire stand. So it becomes apparent that the way the stand works is that it possesses an already existing boat and causes it to turn into that giant freighter, which the stand user, the orangutan, was able to control pretty much like a second body. Pretty much, he could do anything he wanted with the stand, and it would obey him like a second form, like a second skin, almost. And it's impossible to escape because the boat is an entire stand, and the only way to get off the boat is to defeat the stand user in control. At which point they finally finish their journey to Singapore and decide to rest up in a hotel and spend a couple hours to regroup and think about their strategy, while also catching up on some Z's, unaware that something has already begun to follow them. And in the last couple instances of the episode, in the last couple moments of the episode, we find out that Dio's stand has already begun to manifest, and that Enya's son is actually the man who killed Polnareff's sister. So he was right, there is a connection. But I'm interested to see what Dio's stand is. So my prediction was correct. He does have his own stand, but it's not necessarily that hermit purple looking stand. It's a different stand. And from what we see of it in this episode, it's clearly humanoid and possibly sporting a golden coloration. But beyond that, I have no idea. I have no idea what is going to happen with the rest of this arc, I guess. I'm assuming eventually Dio is going to regain his full strength and go after the Joestar group himself, because he was contemplating doing that, but he isn't at full strength yet. So I'm assuming he's eventually going to do that with his stand, which looks to be very humanoid and possibly very powerful. But who knows? I honestly have no idea what's going to happen, but it's clear that something is going to happen in Singapore, because there's a thing, possibly a stand, sitting in the hotel room where the Joestar group is going to take a nap, and it's clear that they're eventually going to have to come face to face with that stand. And there are 6 other stand users under Dio's employ, meaning that he has no real shortage of stand users to send after them, and they're all closing in. So so they're going to have to fight at least 6 more stands before the series ends. And possibly Dio himself, because Dio's kind of the final antagonist. They're going to have to fight him eventually. But yeah, this episode was interesting because it showed that there is indeed stands that normal people can see, and oddly enough, apparently not all of the stand users have to be human. Apparently they can also be other creatures like apes or possibly fish. I don't know. This series kind of just throws stuff at the wall and sees what sticks. So who knows what's going to happen. But anyway, if you guys haven't indeed seen this episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and I really do want to know what you guys think. So if you guys have seen this episode, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month and it really helps me out, so I would definitely appreciate it if you did that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!